Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Student Learning and Student Development Committee will come to order. It is exactly 10:57. All members present, myself, Penny Forrest, Joe Hearne, and our Vice Chancellor for Student Learning and Student Development, Elton Stuckley's present, and he'll proceed with our reports.
Thank you, Regent McKenna. There are 3 consent minute orders on the agenda today and 3 reports. I will be handling the first 2 minute orders, and Vice Chancellor Wooten will be handling the last one. The first one has to deal with semester credit classes with fewer than 10 students. And we had a lengthy discussion on this this morning, and looking at the numbers are always the lowest in the fall, up a little bit in the spring, and then in the summer when everybody's trying to complete students for graduation. And there's some outliers there that have fallen by and got out of sequence. They're generally a little higher in the summer. But overall, looking at it, the goal of the board for the last 10 years that I can remember was to try to keep them below 10% on average. And I will say, looking back at the numbers for this past year, even though summer is a little higher, they are well within our average moving forward. And so when you look at the minute order, the 7 to 9 students, which operate on a cost recovery basis, there were 9.29% of those. And when those with the less, 6 or fewer, the percentage was 7.45. And there is a change, though, that I would like to address that I visited with Regent McKenna on this morning. 2 biennia ago, the Appropriations Act was revised, the special provisions that took out requirements for all of higher ed, that it was a must that they report every semester, every term. For some reason, TSTC had been left out of that. This time it was changed, and now the rules say that it is up to the governing board of the college to decide what they want to do with small class reports. And she and I visited this morning, and I said, Regent McKenna, you can do it once a year. You can do it the way we've been doing it. It is the board's decision on what they would like to do. And so I would like to ask her to speak on the board's behalf and take input on that.
Well, after our discussion this morning and also visiting with the Chancellor, I just think we should discuss it. I think we've beat this to death. I feel like we've talked so much about, the small class sizes, and since the funding formula is changing, it may be to our benefit to have a smaller class to get a student out into the workforce quicker. There's a lot of reasons why I think that, looking at this on a semester by semester, even by quarter basis, may not be as beneficial as it has been in the past, and no longer required. How often do we want to look at it? Maybe once a year, not at all. Leave it at the discretion of the presidents and the operators to look at their own campuses. I don't mind looking at it once a year on an aggregate basis, because, like Dr. Stuckley said, it fluctuates, semester by semester, so I'll take your recommendations.
I agree, once a year would be a good timing to do that, as long as it's not too cumbersome for them to keep the records and produce them for us.
And can I ask, where would you like that reported, at what meeting?
I think this is an appropriate meeting. It's sort of the wrap up of the
Okay.
previous
Very
fiscal
good.
year and the start of the new fiscal year.
Having stated that, that will require, now that we know what the board wishes, that will require us to go back and change System Operating Standard ES.4.03 to fit the requirements in. But we will be working on that and get that approved within the next couple of
Do we need
months.
to take a vote on that? It's board action about.
We won't be able to do that at this time because it's not on the agenda as an action item, but what we can do is bring it back next time with the new SOS.
So it's an official adoption of the board for an annual reporting of
Great.
class sizes.
So having stated that, for this particular minute order, the Board of Regents accepts the summer 2013 semester credit small class report and authorizes the continuation of classes of fewer than 10 students at Texas State Technical College, deeming them to be necessary and justifiable. So the next minute order is 39-13. It is annual approval of current associate degree and certificate programs. If you look, there is a coordinating board requirement, Chapter 9, Subchapter E, 9.93, that requires all degrees and certificate programs be approved by the co-board. However, on their documentation, it also states there is a check when you send programs to them as to whether or not the governing board has adopted those programs and agreed to them. In meeting with the Chancellor, there's been a lot of changes over the last couple of years, you know, with the new funding model and moving to certificates and MSAs and just, you know, he wanted to make absolutely sure that nothing fell through the cracks and that there would not be anything that the board had not approved. So in my VC role, I got with all of the vice presidents for student learning. They submitted all of the programs that they have in existence, including those that will be starting this fall semester, fall 2013, and put a lengthy listing together of all of the awards at all of the locations in the system. And so what we're looking at doing is likewise again in Marshall next year, just to make sure everyone knows and has seen and approved them, we will be submitting this same list with any additions every year at the board meetings here in Marshall, if that meets your approval. Therefore, the recommended minute order is the Board of Regents approves the current list of associate degrees and certificate programs. Activation of any current approved program is contingent upon meeting all related THECB requirements. And now I'll turn it over to Vice Chancellor Wooten to handle the third minute order.
Third minute order is really, really simple, but like Linda found out yesterday, we sometimes make it more complex. Sounds like Abbott and Costello, who's on first, when you read this a couple of times. As we went through reviewing our policies, minute orders, those types of things, it appears that we have two of them on the same topic. One of them is 3-81, which is the policy for graduation awards. And then the other one is 7797, requirements for graduation. And as it turns out, by the time you compare them and what's changed and what's new, that you only really need one of them. And the one that is correct is 7797. So we're going to recommend that we rescind 3-81, the policy for graduation, and keep 7797, which is requirements for graduation. And so the recommendation would be that the Board of Regents rescind the following minute order, number 3-81, policy for graduation awards.
Talk about the vetting of this.
Oh, it's everybody, every vice president that works for TSTC and all the vice chancellors have all looked at this, and it is exactly as it says. It's that simple. It's just redundant, and anytime you have two documents telling you slightly different things, there's an opportunity for confusion and problems and errors. And so we felt that the best thing to do is to rescind the one that is either redundant or has old, inaccurate information in it.
Any questions? Thank you.
Good job.
We also have 3 reports, and Vice Chancellor Stepper's
That's okay, thank you. The first report is on the TSTC Board of Regents Certificate of Outstanding Achievement. If you turn to the next page, there were 2 award winners at National Skills USA in 2013. Those 2 winners were from Waco. The first was a bronze medal in residential system installation and maintenance, Brian Watson, and the second one was a silver medal in computer programming, Paul White. And when you look at these over the past 5 or 6 years, TSTC across the system has always had a gold medal winner at nationals, but this is the first time. But you know, you can't always have things change, and sometimes you're not going to have a gold medal. But we're still very, very proud when you look at these 2 winners right here. There were only 8 national medalists in Texas, and so TSTC still had 25% of them. So out of the national awards, 2 of 8 were won by TSTC students. And if you look right below the 2 medal winners, 33 of 39 students that competed placed in the top 10 in nationals. And also, when you look at how Skills USA functions at the high school and secondary education, higher ed and high school, there's over 300,000 that start in this competition. And at nationals, you're looking at about 6,000 students. And so that speaks very highly of the award winners and the students and what they can do at TSTC. So any questions, comments about that? Okay. The next report is on the Board of Regents honor graduates for spring 2013. Across the system, there are a total of 30 associate degrees, 4 certificates, 6 MSAs. At 2 locations, the first at Marshall, there was a gentleman that had dual majors, that will have 2 majors when he graduates. Chad B. McNeely has an AAS in Industrial Maintenance Technology, and also will be a graduate with an AAS in Instrumentation Technology. At TSTC Waco, there's a Miss Christine Rode, who will have a dual major, be a graduate in Air Traffic Control and Aircraft Dispatch Technology. So we're seeing more and more of the students that are opting in some areas, and these are the honor graduates. I know we have many more that don't fit that role, that have decided to look at more than one option when they are at TSTC. Any questions on that report? The third and final report is the annual unduplicated semester credit student enrollment, the 10-year history, and the 5-year student awards count. If you look, as you can see, that going in from 2004 to 2009 and 10, there was an upward trend. You know, a lot of it had to do with when the recession hit, more and more people were unemployed and heading back to school. However, at the same time, we started refocusing on looking at the new model. And as you can see from the numbers, the enrollment numbers are down, except at TSTC West Texas, they are up. They were the college that started on the refocusing toward the new model first. And so consequently, they dipped off sooner, but are on the way back up now, focusing on the new model, and have also improved, as President Lawrence said yesterday, refocusing on what programs are beneficial in what areas. And so they are up 6.15%. Across the state of Texas, though, at 2-year colleges, in a meeting on Monday, as I reported last year, 74.23% of all 2-year colleges in Texas were down last year on enrollment. That percentage is right now at 75.13. So it's actually a little higher than it was last year. So having said all of that, as we've stated many times, it's not so much now about numbers. The important thing to see is on the next page. Even with the decrease in numbers, the important thing to note is the awards. Enrollment has declined. The number of awards or completers has risen. And that's, you know, been part of the goal and the focus, not only at TSTC, but in all higher education across the nation, you know, moving from access to success. And we feel like we have positioned ourselves and are doing a much better job on not so much worrying about just getting numbers in for the sake of it, but when we get them in, we want to try to do everything we can do to make them successful. And it shows right here in the data that is in front of you. So, having stated that, are there any questions or comments concerning this report? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that concludes our report, and the Committee for Student Learning and Student Development is adjourning at 11:11.
Thank you, Linda. Our next committee report will be the Committee for Human and Organizational Development. Joe Hearne, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, the Human and Organizational Development Committee will come to order at this time, and it's, I guess, 11:12 Central Standard Time. All our members are present, Ms. McKenna and Gene Seaman and myself. We had a really good discussion about the HR activity, and in that meeting, we introduced our new professional development officer, which Ms. Lawrence will talk about. We had a long discussion about salaries and where the employees are within the system salary-wise. Gail has been doing about a year's worth of work on making sure that our employees are compensated properly. We talked about workman's compensation, which is one of my pet peeves, because if it gets out of control, it can have a negative impact on the university, on the college itself in terms of accidents. And we talked about the rollout of Jeff and how important he is to the organization, and Gail will talk about that as well.
Thank you, Regent Hearne. We have got two proposed minute orders today. The first one is minute order 41-13C. And as all of you know, we have recently had the benefit of hiring Mr. Jeff Kilgore as our Vice Chancellor for institutional advancement. He was appointed to the position. Jeff, would you please stand up? You know that it requires board approval for any new Vice Chancellor, so I'd like to turn it over to Chancellor
Yeah,
Reeser.
if I could. For several years now, we've been talking to you about the fact that we think development is something that TSTC could do in a whole new way. The last time I looked at the numbers, in America, there's about $240 billion a year that is donated to worthy causes. Higher ed gets about 10% of that. And out of that, the two-year sector gets maybe 2%. We don't have a particularly strong record as an industry in doing development. Our intention all along has been to change that. And we think that with Jeff Kilgore, we showed you last year a plan that included a whole new way for us, but a really tried and true way to begin to install a mindset of philanthropy in TSTC. It's something that'll have to start at the very top and permeate all the way down to the bottom in terms of the way that we do things. If you, by the way, I don't know if y'all know this, but last night during our reception, Jeff landed a $10,000 check. Just thought you'd like to know that.
Yes.
So, leaving no stone unturned, I got a $1,000 one, by the way. He got a $10,000 one. So, here we are, starting in this whole new role, and there's no way we're gonna jump on this without the right talent in place. So I want you to know, we went out and we searched, and right there in our backyard was an opportunity to grab someone who's been in this business for years, when one of the universities, Baylor University, who has been incredibly successful in terms of alumni relations and philanthropy and development. And so Jeff has been with us now for a couple weeks, and in a little later in the agenda, you'll hear him talk some about just some brief ideas about initial plans and things like that. But I can tell you it's a brand new day. And we couldn't be more excited about having this level of talent join our team at the system level and lead us through all of this thing. He's already got me plenty busy, I'll tell you that. And I think if you're not careful, he'll have you pretty busy too, in terms of making sure that we're out there taking advantage of every opportunity we have. And so I hope you'll positively consider this and see this as the launch of a brand new effort that we've talked about before, but now we're doing. So with that, I beg your support.
Just one additional note to that, I had the benefit on Jeff's first day. As you know, the foundation board goes around to each of the campuses, and they came to West Texas, specifically the Abilene campus, on his first day of employment. And we had a reception, and he did a great job, and I'm really looking forward to what he's going to do for the entire system. So welcome, Jeff. The recommended minute order is the Board of Regents approved the appointment of Jeff Kilgore as Vice Chancellor for Institutional Advancement. The second proposed minute order is 42-13C, employee holiday schedule for the fiscal year 2015. You've seen this before, you're familiar with it. Just as a reminder, on that second page, you can see the listing of all the Texas state holidays, and TSTC as a system chooses to take some of those days and put those on the winter break to give our faculty and staff some additional time over the Christmas holidays, and we've done that traditionally for as long as I can remember.
Okay,
Yes,
before you
sir.
go into your report. During our meeting this morning, Regent Seaman came to our meeting and expressed the fact that since we did hire Jeff and how important his job was, that he wanted us to make sure Jeff presented his plan to us as a board, so we'll know exactly what he's planning on doing in the future. So at our meeting in Sweetwater, he'll have a plan for the board as to where he's moving forward.
So the recommended minute order in regards to the holiday schedule is the Board of Regents approved the fiscal year 2015 employee holiday schedule for the Texas State Technical College. Moving on to Pod-6 page, as the familiar report of the appropriated employees. It's got the listing there. As you can see, we are still well above, or under our cap, I should say, of 71.3. You might notice that Hearne Regent, it shows that there are 2.1, which it doesn't, that's insignificant. The legislature gives us employees as a whole, and so we've done some trading around in the past, so there's no need for concern in regards to that. Okay. Second report is just my oral report that I try to give at every board meeting. First, I would like to introduce Ms. Deborah Shipp. Deborah, would you please stand? Deborah is our new professional development officer, and she works out of the Waco office. However, she works for, well, the entire system, but specifically for the campuses of Waco, West Texas, and Marshall. And she is going to be conducting employee and faculty training, and will be on the road a lot. Deborah has over 20 years experience in education as a teacher and in professional development, and we are delighted that she has joined the HOD executive team, and look forward to what she can train our employees on. It's something that our employees and management have stated for a long time running, that we need more training. And so now we're going to hit the ground running. And she informed me just a little bit ago that she's going to be in West Texas for 3 days next week. So welcome, Deborah. Just a couple of quick updates for you. Faculty contracts are going out. In fact, the 9 months for Waco and Harlingen, they have some 9-month faculty contracts. They've already gone out because we need them to start a little earlier to get their labs ready and going. 12 months are going out, and they should be back in the office by August 24th. Just completed our employee benefit enrollment. That happens annually every summer, where folks can look at their benefit package and make some changes. Something that I would like to congratulate President Wooten on and the campus of Marshall is if they can hold on 2 more weeks, and I have confidence that you will, they have gone an entire year accident-free, 0 workers' comp injuries. That's a big deal. And so congratulations. Strap everybody down.
We all start by.
Yeah.
That's right.
Everybody in bubble wrap. Here we go.
That helped you walk outside, okay?
Yeah.
You all have escorts to your vehicle.
update on the compensation study. As you know, this has been a long time coming. It's been a work in progress for almost a year now. It was this time last year that we put out the RFP last January and contracted with MGT, a highly reputable company that has worked with higher ed and all sorts of companies across the United States and other countries. And just as a reminder, this compensation study was done as a direct response to our employee satisfaction survey that was done earlier. 43% of our employees had indicated that they felt like they were not paid fairly for the work that they were doing. And quite simply, we had never done a compensation study or analysis before. So we couldn't, we could say, we think this, we feel this, but we didn't have any data to substantiate that. And so we did contract with MGT. Angela Ball was the Associate Vice Chancellor for HOD. She was the project lead on this. It's completed. I'll be giving you the highlights of that today. I know that you particularly don't want all those nitty-gritty details. This is the report. So that's the large report.
Let's pass it around so
Yeah.
we can read it.
Right. Well, in all seriousness, it's later in my report, but this will be available for our employees to look at. We will have that online so that they can see, because they will be interested in reading those details. So we will have that available for them. Starting next week, after the board approves, makes all the approvals today, starting next week, we will be rolling out employee meetings discussing and giving faculty and staff details, informations about how they're personally impacted, and be able to answer specific questions, because I know that there will be a lot of questions. And I'm just kind of going to go over this real quickly in a history, just as a reminder. We started the process in October of 2012. At that point, we sent out a document called a job content questionnaire. It was sent out to all employees. Basically, it's an opportunity for employees to look and respond and say, this is what I do, this is the level of work I do, this is what I think, because we needed to have that information in order to figure out where people fall in with levels. We had over 1,100 employees respond to that, and we're told from MGT that was a tremendous response, so we were pleased for that information. There was also a management issues paper where supervisors could look at that information that was given, and they could make comments as well. 2 intensive market reviews were completed, one for faculty and then one for non-faculty. And then the leadership team, we decided a few things ahead of time. We decided that we wanted a consistent plan across the entire system. We didn't want West Texas to have a plan, Waco to have a different plan. We wanted one plan for all of us to work within. And then we had to start making some compensation philosophy decisions. And this is really important, and it's important to note that these decisions were made before any data came in. We didn't want any numbers or costs of things to influence how we felt about what we want to do as a company to provide compensation, what our philosophy is in regards to that. What we want to do is to attract talent, we want to retain talent, and we want people to move and be promoted as they stay with the company. One thing that we decided as a group, when I say group, I'm talking about T5 and some other people within the leadership team, because when you're talking about faculty, we had President Stuckley's group, the VPs of student learning were involved because they had, we needed feedback from them on certain questions. But we had decided early on that regardless of what the data came back as, that we would give any employee who was below, when the data came back and they were below the minimum in their job grade, that we committed across the board to bring them at least up to minimum. And we didn't know how many employees that was gonna be. We didn't, but we had decided that we would do that. We looked at internal and external factors. We looked at, the data came from CUPA, which stands for College and University Professional Association. That's all higher ed. They participate in salary surveys, and you can go look and see. And so we compared our salaries with CUPA. And also, we had BLS data as a point of reference. The implementation process will start, once this is approved, it will be implemented September 1st and show up on the paychecks October 1st. Each employee will receive an individual letter specific to where they are, what pay grade they're in, and all the details that, of course, everybody wants to know. They'll be receiving that in the next couple of weeks. The other thing that we committed to in regards to philosophy was if we have employees that fall outside the max of the job title, the leadership team said, well, we're not going to take away their salary. We're going to say, you might be frozen there and not get an increase. If there are increases in the future, they might get a stipend or something, so it doesn't continue to propel them further down the grade. So that was another philosophy decision that was made. And if people fall within the range, then there wouldn't be a change at this time. Again, as I mentioned, we'll have sessions next week to give more detailed information. When the data came back, it's important to note that, as we talked about in the budget meeting yesterday, as a whole, and Randy and I have talked about at small colleges, it's tough when you're down in budget. But the Chancellor and these guys right here and all of the CFOs, they scrounged around and pulled money, and it's costing us to bring everybody up to minimum just at $500,000 across the board, across the system. And that's a lot of money when you're coming up short in the first place. It's $497,714. We also conducted a benefit review, and that's really important. I think a lot of employees, we take our state benefits for granted. And when you compare people like me that have worked in the private sector and know what other places charge you, and especially someone like me that has a big family, how much that is. And so we did a review on that. Our entire benefit package is composed of about 33% of the employee's entire compensation. So that's pretty significant. And that's in the report as well. Something that Dr. Maldonado pointed out in our T5 meeting the other day is for retirement purposes, our employees, you get Social Security and you get the TRS on top of it. And that's most people, you don't get those two different things. And so we don't do a good enough job, and I think of promoting and acknowledging what a great benefit package we have. It's a huge draw for people to want to come to work at TSTC. And I think that will be one of our goals in HOD going forward, is to try to promote that better. And Regent Seaman and I and Regent Hearne had a discussion about that in the committee meeting. Basically, in conclusion, it was a lengthy process, but it was comprehensive. It started off because we were all over the map. It took time to narrow it down and focus, and I know the employees were very anxious And I understand that. You know, times are tough. Everybody wants to know how they're going to be affected. You know, we had hundreds and hundreds of job offers because we went for a significant period of time where if somebody wanted to hire somebody and then they looked through and they couldn't find the exact match, they would just make something up. And so we started from this huge report. The commitment that T5 and leadership teams have made is that we will continue to manage this plan going forward. It's not going to do us any good to have invested all this time and money to come up with a plan and not stick with it going forward. And so we've made that commitment, and we will do that. Not everyone's going to be happy on this, and I'm not going to pussyfoot around it because, I mean, compensation is very near and dear to everyone's heart, as we all know. There will be people that will not get increases, and they're going to be disappointed, and I can understand that. But there will also be people that will receive an increase because they need to be brought up to minimum. We will talk to the employees about this. When we started the process, it was a snapshot in time that started back in October. Now, there's going to be some employees within that period of time that may not be in the same job that they were back in October. And so there's going to be things that we're going to be looking at, and it's a work in progress. And the employees know, or I hope they know, HOD is here to work with them, to talk through that, to get their perspective. And it's our job to be able to explain that as best we can. And I know we'll have the support of the supervisors and the leadership teams as we go through that process. And, you know, in conclusion, you know, people that work here at TSTC, we don't come to TSTC to get rich. You're not going to get rich working for TSTC. But I'll tell you what you get to do. You get to change people's lives. And that's why people come to work at TSTC, is because we change people's lives. And we want to be an employer of choice. We want people to want to work at TSTC. I have seen on my campus, I've heard from Dr. Stuckley, numerous employees who have left for whatever reason. Maybe they were going to go make more money, and then they email or call and say, we would love to come back. Because, you know, maybe their benefit package cost them more and they didn't take that into consideration, or there wasn't that quality work-life balance that they wanted going somewhere else. But we value our employees. They're who work with and for our students, and we want to compensate them and reward them appropriately. So we're committed to this plan, and I hope that the employees will realize that the management team is committed, and that we're putting our money where our mouth is by taking out $500,000 to put towards the first rollout. And that is the compensation report update.
Question? You talked about a compensation philosophy, understand, and then $500,000 of salary increases. Is it too sensitive to talk about that philosophy of, is it across the board percentages? Is it based on merit? Is it based upon job categories? You said some people may not get a raise, and is it too sensitive to talk about that philosophy, or?
Well, it's not sensitive. I don't think it's too sensitive. But when an employee feels that, or each employee will fall into a certain grade, you have to start off with a variety of grades. And so then you have exempt, and then you have non-exempt, you have faculty, and you have staff. And so there's a lot of different components with it. The philosophy goes with what do we want to do after that employee when we figure out where they're supposed to be. Because when we went through the process, let's just take the very generic job title, director. Well, there are a lot of different levels of directors across our system. Some people supervise 10 people, maybe 20. Some directors don't supervise anybody. Some people manage a big budget, some people don't, but they still share the same title as director, as it stood. And so you have to go through, it can be very complicated. So going forward, when you ask about percentage increases, that is what we would have to do according to our budget every year, depending on, I mean, we determine where we go as far as across the board increases. What we want to do is to be more performance-based, so that we can reward those employees that are really working hard and doing a good job. And in all fairness, it's up to us to be able to tell the employees what they can do in order to reach that level. Does that make sense?
In the report, and we'll send you all a PDF, can we do that?
You can't, it's a big file.
It's a giant file, but we can send it to you if you'd like to see it.
Be happy to.
For the sake of conciseness, Gail has kind of mushed together two parts. There is the compensation philosophy, and then there are the remedial strategies that are the result of the report. The philosophy looks like things like this. We want to pay our employees, it contains statements like, we want to pay our employees well. Not necessarily at the top of the market, but certainly not at the bottom. We want to have a good work-life balance. We want to have a generous benefits package that exceeds what our peers might like. Those are the philosophy type statements that the T5 sat down and crafted. And then the remedial strategies were things like the first group of employees, to the extent that the report indicates we have some people who aren't paid correctly, who are we going to take care of first? What we found is we don't have enough money to fix every problem in 1 year. So the first group, the first strategy we picked was we're going to bring anybody who's below their minimum pay grade up to the minimum. We also have ones that have to do with progress through their career. We have midpoint targets and things like that. And so those strategies will come in the periods to come. We'll implement those strategies until eventually this report indicates we fulfilled our total philosophy appropriately. Did that?
Yes.
Is that clear? Okay.
I'm-
So we
I'm-
actually have the philosophy and then we have the remedial strategies.
I want to compliment them, the complexity of what you're doing, the unintended consequences of what you're doing. There have been a gentleman like Mr. Skinner, Mr. Directly, bankers, people at the table that, and I had worked for a major corporation 30 years and dealt with that. When you raise somebody a certain percentage at the bottom, then you do the same percentage at the top. Or when the government says you're going to raise the minimum wage and it affects the bottom, and then everybody else expects it's a bump up thing. And no matter what you do in compensation, it has repercussions, and it's very complex and very sensitive, and that's why I asked about the philosophy and how you address that.
Yeah, I'll give you another example is the state of Texas has longevity pay, as you know. And then, so after you've been here 5 years, you get extra money. The philosophy that we adopted is that we want increases to be based not necessarily on longevity, but on performance. That's a philosophy statement, for
Can I say
example, that
amen?
we've adopted. And so, and that's the underpinning of the strategies. If you don't have those philosophies to begin with, your strategies will be hit and miss, scattershot everywhere. So it was back at the Harlingen board meeting during the T5 meeting that we sat and hashed those through. It took a long time, but we got those done.
Thank you for your work.
Well, I'd like to make a comment. One of the things that feeds well into what Gail is trying to do is creating this professional development office. And what she's done on a preliminary basis is looked at a lot of job functions and looked at what their training needs are and trying to customize some of that training so as people want to move up, there's things they're going to have to do to get to that point. and then an accountability. And another thing she talked about is we're gonna have to make sure that everybody is being trained properly and that their training is actually taking place. Rather than saying, I'm gonna give everybody 24 hours and you go get training and you never go. There's some accountability component to that development part as well. I just wanted to make that comment because we talked about that this morning when we was having a meeting. Is that it, Lee?
Yes, sir. Any other questions? That concludes my report.
Brother Chairman, that concludes the Human and Organizational Development Committee reports. And it's exactly, I think, 11:42 East Texas time.
Okay, thank you, Joe and Linda. Our next committee is Committee for Facilities, Joe Gurecki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our Facilities Committee met this morning. First of all, I'd like to call to order the meeting of our Facilities Committee. The time is 11:43 a.m. And I'd like to announce that the committee that were present were Regent Gurecki, Regent Forrest, and Regent Hatchell. It's quite an exciting list of things that we want to discuss with y'all. And I'd like to call upon Ray Freeze and walk us through each of the 5-minute orders as well as the 2 reports.
Thank you. We're bringing to you today 5-minute orders and 2 reports. The first minute order is found on page F1, 43-13. And in this minute order from Harlingen, we're asking you to rescind a minute order 6411 concerning the relocation of and renovation of building 20H3 for the building construction program. The curriculum has been retooled on that program in response to industry needs. And will be more focused and directed at construction science and construction management in lieu of craft training. The facility meets that need as presently configured, and the need for this project no longer exists. It's important to note under fiscal implications, the money for this project was bond money that was budgeted in fiscal year 2013, but none of that money was expensed, and that becomes important when we look at the next minute order. So the recommendation from TSTC Harlingen Administration is to the Board of Regents to rescind minute order 64-11 as written. Are there any questions? The next minute order, 44-13, found on page F2, is also from Harlingen. This minute order is for the concept to repair and renovate building 200D. This renovation will add capacity and quality to the high demand programs. Under fiscal implications, the last minute order we discussed, the bonds were funded in 2013 but not spent. So the funds in the amount of $1.6 million will be rebudgeted in fiscal year 2014 for the repair and renovation of building 200D. On page F4, you'll see a campus map that shows the location of that building. So the board, or the administration at Harlingen recommends the Board of Regents approve the concept for repair and renovation of building 200D, which authorizes the Chancellor or designee to commit up to 10% of the estimated aggregate construction contract amount for pre-construction activities. Are there any questions? The next minute order, 45-13, is found on page F5. And this is from the Waco campus. This is for the acceptance of the East Williamson County Higher Education Center at Hutto. And at this time, I'd like to take a moment to just congratulate and compliment and thank the team that worked on that project. Rob Walliver, the Vice President, is here this morning. The site manager, Cole Woodard. Rob, would you please stand up so we can... Rob and Cole were able to bring that project in on time and at budget. I know Rob burned up the highway to make that happen, and did all the heavy lifting on that project, and certainly to be complimented. And President Stuckley, the staff at Waco, the physical plant, and, you know, your VP of Student Learning that have, although it's not construction, that have worked so hard to get that facility ready and the equipment there and furnishings for the first day of class. Did an awesome job and need to be complimented.
Are we gonna have a ribbon cutting?
Yes, October the 13th, Sunday from 2 to 4 at the location.
So the recommended.
We'll let folks know about that.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
we'll be sending out. I already mentioned yesterday to the board that we'll be sending out formal invitations as well. Just to make sure everybody can get it on the calendar.
I'll bring a big pair of scissors.
This is probably not for this committee, but I have questions, okay? Do we know kind of where we are with the fall enrollment?
Right now, we're at about, I feel like we're probably gonna close at about 80, which considering we didn't, as I said yesterday, gearing up for the new competency-led cohort-based model, we did not take any students this spring or this summer. So I feel like that's a pretty good start considering the way we redesigned the curriculum and without taking any students the last 2 semesters.
Thank you.
So the Waco administration recommends the Board of Regents authorizes the Chancellor or his designee to accept the project and pay the contractor 95% of the construction cost upon substantial completion and 100% on final completion. Are there any questions?
Ray,
Yes,
how
sir.
did we come out with our base contract, our final contract? Are we, I'm sure we're a little bit above our initial contract?
At budget-wise, you mean?
Yeah, with Bartlett Cox.
Bartlett
Did we-
Cox. You know, our internal goal amongst us was to have a negative change order at the end. You know, we had built a contingency in there. We were doing very well through the project, and so we did some owner-elected changes that enhanced the project. When it got down to the end, we ended up using the total contingency, and I say at budget because we're not sure whether we're going to be a few dollars over or a few dollars under when the dust all settles, but we're going to be right at budget. The worst-case scenario would be about $20,000 over, but we may be that much on the good side, too. But it's very close, and
Yeah,
on that size of
for size,
project,
that project that size, that's awfully good.
very good job.
And if we added enhancements, what we ended up doing was for the amount of money budgeted, we got a better building than we planned. That's cool.
Good.
Okay, the next minute order, 46-13, is found on page F6. This is from Texas State Technical College Waco also. This is for the acceptance of Phase 1 structural and facility repairs at the John Connolly Technology Center. Construction of Phase 1 is complete. The dewatering wells, monitoring wells, and benchmarks are in place and will be evaluated, anticipating Phase 2 repairs for both interior and exterior to proceed in the summer of 2014. The TSTC Waco administration recommends the Board of Regents authorizes the Chancellor or his designee to accept Phase 1 of the structural and facility repairs to the John B. Connolly Technology Center as written. Are there any questions? The next minute order, 47-13, is found on page F8. This minute order is for the acceptance of the renovation of the family housing project at TSTC Waco campus. There were a total of 135 units renovated, consisting of wood-framed houses, brick houses, and duplexes. The Waco administration recommends the acceptance of the project as written. The major projects report. If you'll turn to page F10, this is the Harlingen report. Project number 1 is moving along well, 50% complete. This is the engineering building. It will be completed in the winter of 2014 or January of 2014. Project number 2 is the one that if the board agrees to rescind that minute order, that project will come off the list. Project number 3 is the $1,600,000 renovation of Building 20S for the Allied Health Programs. That project will start in the spring of 2014. Project number 5 is the re-roofing project. It will complete in the fall of 2013. Project number, did I say 4 or 5? That was 4 was the re-roofing project. Project number 5 is the renovation of Building 20 PM. This project was the TRB project, and it is on hold right now until funding is found for that project. And project number 6 is also the project that the minute order presented for the concept, and that is planned to start in fall of 2013 if the minute order is approved. On page F11, we see Marshall's major project report. This project, of course, is the large project at Red Oak, which was also relied on the tuition revenue bonds, which did not pass. That extension is open, and at Red Oak and facilities are provided by the Red Oak Independent School District, but the project will go on hold until we find funding. Waco's major project list. Project number 1, of course, is the renovation of the housing project that we're asking you to accept, as well as number 2, the Huddle project, and number 3, phase 1 of the J.B. Conley building. Just a note, phase 1 did come in under budget, and so the numbers, the breakdown will be reflected in the next meeting report to show more funds available for phase 2 construction. Project number 4 is the TxDOT managed project. Phase 1 has been awarded and will start shortly. Project number 5. This was a major project. $8.5 million was contingent on the TRB funding. As we discussed at the special board meeting, if that funding did not occur, we would move forward on a plan to phase that project in pieces and start a smaller project which would allow us to meet the water quality standards without having to waste the water. And so the plan is to move forward with the design and study to make that happen, and then try to plan for the financing of that smaller project. On F14, you'll see a report that's just placed in here really to show you the planning that goes on with the coordinating board. There's a lot of data here, but it's really presented in a way that's useful for the core board, and the numbers are gathered in a way that is useful for the core board that really doesn't mean a lot to us here. But we did want to show you that in this master plan 1 that's certified every year, we do plan. Some of these projects you'll recognize because they've come to you to be approved in concept and are actually being constructed. Others, the core board encourages us to put them on this MP1, even if they're very, very conceptual, because when we do a project application, if it has not appeared on the MP1, it's not reviewed favorably. So it's important to get them on early, but we will not bring them to the board until they're realized that we have the funding and it's a project that's really going to happen. So you'll see on F14 and 15 is Harlingen's report, and I apologize for the quality that you can hardly see the names there, but Marshall's report is on F16 and 17. Waco's report is on F18 and F19, and West Texas is on F20 and F21. Are there any questions?
The renovation of the student housing in Waco, how did we come in on that on budget? Because we had a lot of
For
discussion.
all of you accountants, I think, Rob, you're $6,000 under budget on the Waco housing project, is that right?
$6.
$6.
That is correct. We talked about that.
Rob, that is a round off there.
I was proud of that $6. We don't need TRBs anymore. I mean, we got $6.
Where can we spend it?
Are there any other questions?
And occupancy, are we,
The occupancy is good. That's, the great thing about this is by renovating those houses, they can raise their rent. Rob, what's 10?
The average increase on those renovated units is 15 to 17% above the other, depending on what floor model it is. We currently have all of them 100% occupied, all of them are back in our possession, and we have 15 waitlisted with paid deposits for those units, so occupancy is good in those.
Aren't debt services?
Are we,
Debt services paid.
are we allowing students to still continue working on those projects? Like y'all talked about deconstruction of the buildings. Do any of our students get involved in that?
There are still 2 houses, there may be 3 that are actually project houses that building construction technology are using as project houses.
Okay.
The time frame for getting those complete back to usable is considerably lengthy, but at the point that they're completed, they'll be converted back into rentable space, so.
I have a question. Are we still affording any of the West residents housing?
We still have, I'm probably gonna misspeak, but I think we still have 2 employees that are still living with us. I think everybody else, and I may be misspeaking, as far as, but I'm aware of 2 for sure that we still have. The rest had transitioned back into permanent.
That we have that outreach.
If I could, Ray, I did want to mention on the John Conley building, you know, that's kind of been a sore spot for me for 13 years, but I will tell you, even though the phase 1 is completed, and I think it ran over a month or 2, we just wanted to make sure it was right. What I'm really impressed about the building is the way it was done and the way the construction was done. You can't tell that it's ever been modified, in my opinion. Everything, the brick, everything matches just incredibly to look like it was part of the original design. So phase 1, I'm very satisfied with. We'll just see how it settles now and prepare to move into phase 2.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Ray. That was a very good report, very, very detailed. With that said, I'd like to adjourn this meeting at 11:59 a.m.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, we will take a 1-hour break for lunch. We will reconvene at 1 o'clock to finish the committee meeting, and then we'll go straight into the Board of Regents meeting. Before we get started, we have a little presentation from Mr. Seaman, Regent Seaman, from the ladies at TSDC Marshall.
Regent Seaman, we understand that we would love to give you all gifts every time you come visit us. And you tell us there's a little sticker on there that you don't particularly like that says Made in China. Well, we're going to change that, and we're going to be the first one to do that with a very own TSTC made in the United States jalapeno pepper.
That is wonderful.
My wife and I got sick and tired of those gifts we've been getting, not made in Hearne Regent or TSDC, but made in China. Thank you.
That is good. Very good.
Is that aluminum?
That's what it is.
That's right. Pass it around.
You put your jalapenos down.
On your barbecue grill.
Put them on your barbecue grill.
Yeah.
Jalapeno poppers.
Isn't that cool?
You ready?
These are, they look out,
Our next and final committee is Committee of Fiscal Affairs, Gene Seaman.
Okay. Let's see. The meeting is called to order at 12:55, and the members present are myself, Gene Seaman, John Hatchell, and Linda McKenna. And it asks for committee chair comments from our meeting, and I'm going to take a little time, Mike, to go in that. Of the minute orders, one that we had very exhaustive discussion about, or exciting discussion, was a minute order about the foundation. And I know when we get to that, it's a very cursory type of thing to re-adopt that. But we had Jeff Kilgore in the meeting, and we talked about the rolling out of the new plan, of the new man, Jeff Kilgore, VP, and about the foundation operation plan, which he will intend to present a plan at the Sweetwater meeting. But I wanted to stress, or we had the very exciting meeting about that in terms of what the foundation will mean to us in the future, and Jeff Kilgore's plan and operation of that. Yesterday, Mr. Chancellor, you mentioned that our general revenue was down 3% from the state when the pie chart, that the GR was down 3%. Is that correct?
Well, overall, our GR was up about 3%, but 6% of that was new money for the new locations.
Correct.
So
But the actual GR part of it, okay, so that triggers the thought that how important the foundation is going to be in the next decade, and how important Jeff Kilgore's job is as he goes around annoying everyone, asking for money. And in an educational institution, it seems crass to be asking for money, but the reality is, with the legislature, we're always going to have the problem of less money coming from GR, in my opinion, having been there. And that pressure in their pie chart, over 100 billion. Roger, is it 100 and what billion this time?
I don't know exactly.
All right.
They're in the range.
But at 18 or 19 billion increase, in their pie chart, the pressure of Medicaid, food stamps, welfare, and now with the advent of Obamacare, and we don't even know the outcome of that, but the pressure on the state budget is so extreme, there's going to be less and less money for us in the education field. That makes the foundation and Jeff's job that more important, and everywhere from the chancellor down to the lowest janitor, to the janitor, the chancellor to the janitor, not lowest, but he's as important as you are. But the importance of us in the fundraising arena in each of our campuses and each of our locations, and through the Regents as contacts, in every way we can, that will become a great, important future funding source as the state gives us perhaps less on an inflation-rated basis, and that we have to do more internally. So we had a big discussion about that, and I wanted to take the time to say that to everybody in the room and to the public at large, that this is a reality. And so those are my comments, and Gary, if you'll pick up and discuss the minute orders.
Thank you, Chairman Seaman. We have actually, in the Fiscal Affairs Committee, we have 5 minute orders and 8 reports. And I'll run through these and give you the highlights of that, and then we'll see if there are any questions. The first minute order is number 50-13, found on page FA1. And in your book, you should have a revised version of this. There were a couple of typos, so we replaced it in your book. We have several employees who are either changed or moving or removed from the list of the signature authorizations on all of our vouchers, checks, drafts, orders, and other instruments. Jan Harvey was an employee at West Texas. She's moved from approval for vouchers only to approval for all documents. Peggy Wilkie was removed from electronic outgoing banking transaction, but also remains on vouchers. Carol A. Smith was removed at Marshall because of her resignation. And the entire consolidated IT listing was removed effective September 1st because of the changes we're making in how consolidated IT transactions will be processed in the coming year. So you'll see bold names where those names have been added, and you'll see names crossed out. So those are the changes in the signature authorizations list that we look at almost every meeting.
Thank you, Gary.
Any questions?
We had Gail on there, we had her off of one and back on one, and now she's off of this again.
No, she's actually on this one. Gail, on the revised version, which
Yeah,
you should have in your
We don't
book.
have-
Here's a revised.
Oh, okay.
Here is the revised.
Okay, I'm sorry.
He's got it.
She and Kevin Ship are back on there,
Right.
Thank you.
as they should be.
Did you want to take her off?
No. Well, let's consider that.
Okay, the next minute order is number 5113, concerning the schedule of emoluments for fall 2013 semester. We're making a fairly simple change here. If you look at page FA5, we're merely switching the number of emoluments in a couple of categories. One is on the car allowance from the Executive Director of Resource Development to the Vice Chancellor. So the Vice Chancellor number goes from 5 to 6, and the Executive Director on line 9 goes from 2 to 1, leaving the ABC of External Relations on that one. And we're making the same change on the business expense allowance. So you'll see that on lines 13 and 14. And that's in accordance with the action proposed for the new Vice Chancellor for advancement. Any questions? Okay, the next one is number 5213, which is an amended schedule of student family housing rental rates, service charges, and deposits effective spring 2014 semester. And the change you're going to find in the schedule that follows, which is actually on page FA9, is on line 34, and it's the deposit for family housing at TSTC Waco. And an examination of charges for repairing and make ready for the family housing indicates that we're not charging enough for a deposit, and we're hoping by raising the deposit to 1 month's rent rounded down to the nearest $100, that it'll encourage the occupants to take better care of the facilities. So that's the only change we have in this particular request. So the request is for the board to approve the amended schedule of student and family housing rates effective spring 2014.
Anybody have a problem with that?
So the deposit's refundable if it's in good
What?
It's
condition?
refundable, yes.
The deposit's
Yes,
refundable with
correct.
conditions.
Right.
Yes.
And I think it was brought up that the average cost for repair after a tenant leaves is what?
Over $1,700.
$1,700, far and away from that 1 month's deposit. And then having rental units myself, having dealt with that for years, the good guy leaves and has virtually no damage. And then another person leaves and there are Kool-Aid on the carpet in the bedroom, and there are they've done artistry in the bedrooms, and then when they had a domestic violence thing, maybe he didn't punch out the mate, or he or she, could have been a she, but there was a hole in the wall, and that's $1,000. So it's a long way from that average. When you get to that, it may be $2,000 or $3,000 minimum to do the repair. We'll never recoup that. It's just one of those losses.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Okay, the next minute order is number 5313 on page FA11, which is approval of the TSTC Foundation operating plan for the September 1st 13 through August 31st 14. This particular plan is a general plan, almost similar to a memorandum of understanding about who does what between the two entities. This plan is required by the General Appropriation Act in that TSTC is providing some services to the foundation, and in turn, the foundation is providing services back to TSTC. And the GAA requires that we have a plan each year approved by the board. And the plan basically explains the general operations and the fact that TSTC will provide offices and general support. And then it talks about the other services that the foundation will provide to TSTC. As has been mentioned, there's a plan, there will be a more comprehensive plan forthcoming, and Jeff is going to speak to that.
And that concludes my report. I was a little nervous when the Chancellor whispered to me, "Take my chair." I've fallen for a number of the rookie jokes, from being given his eraser board and then not realizing it was his, and so I'm kind of nervous about the chair, Chancellor, but I'll go ahead. Thank you. Thank you, Regent Seaman, for your introduction and the emphasis on the importance in the next 10-year foreseeable future on fundraising at TSTC. Thank you for the term of endearment. My mother's called me annoying most of my life, but you have to get used to it. I appreciate that fact. I'll try to be brief, Mr. Chairman. As Gary said, we really don't have a plan in place, an operational plan. We do have a wonderfully drafted business plan that you all reviewed and adopted, that Kevin and risk management put together, that I use kind of as an orientation when interviewing. I think the plan is very complete. It touches on the emphasis on leveraging vendor relationships, leveraging industry relationships more than what we're doing, building alumni, grassroots, constituent bases. I feel very, very confident that we can execute that plan. Before we develop an operational plan for you to review, I think it's important for me to be able to assess on a different track, what advancement infrastructural resources we have in place. We are fundraising in some areas, so that I'm not pretending we're going to begin something new. We're going to strengthen our existing fundraising efforts. But I'm going to need a little time to get around everywhere. This is, I believe, my third week. I've been traveling, but I'm going to need to see what we have in place in regards to marketing, to messaging, to constituent access, to resource development, corporate relations, vendor relations, and as I get my mind around these things and learn from those that are doing it successfully, getting input, which I began first and foremost with our team of presidents during my interview cycle. At the next meeting, I will come back with how not only are we going to progress as a system, the top to the bottom to both sides, but what role the foundation is going to play within that. What's the value add of a foundation? It's spending flexibility, it's cash management, it's donor channels, but it doesn't need to be in and of itself. It has to have its value role supporting the system and the rest of the advancement efforts that we have in place. So I will bring that back in September as an initial draft. We'll get feedback back from the Regents and the different T5 members, and we'll build it as we go. It would not be prudent for me to say, there's no cookie cutter advancement plan for an institution. Everything is culturally based. And so we will get an understanding of that. I will be thinking about that every day. I will give each of you time to prepare for the individual conversations we have about your annual giving to TSTC. So we'll all kind of learn and grow in this together. That's kind of, Mike and I have talked a lot about, he compares my job to coaching. I spent some time coaching. Spent a lot of time this summer coaching a bunch of little leaguers. So I'm looking forward to, you are all capable fundraisers. You're all keys to relationships. I'm going to leave you with 4 coaching tips to think about as we start this journey. These are the foundational elements that I assess when considering this appointment and changing my career path. Can we be successful in fundraising? can I be successful and keep a job? That's important to me. And there's four things. The first is visionary leadership. There's four elements. You have to have visionary leadership. A great Texan named Sam Houston defined leadership as someone who works to improve the lives of others around him or works to improve the system in which he lives. As I was interviewing around the state, visiting with the Chancellor and the presidents of each institution, they clearly convinced me that they possess those traits of leadership. Each one of them see this as a calling. They are focused on two things: improving the lives of students and bettering the state of Texas. Very much like Sam Houston, I'm very privileged to be on that team. A sound product. I'm preaching to the choir. To raise money, you have to have a sound product you're selling. If you look at the recent legislative session, the billboard that they basically put on technical education and TSTC, as you look at our product in higher education, a lot of institutions, they raise money by camouflaging their product. They don't want people to look at the return on investment, so they use religion or football or other things to diverge attention from their product, and that's how they raise money. We don't have that challenge at TSTC. We can sell the product. Now, in building cases of support, we will build, which is number 3, we will build transactional cases, business-based cases to industry, to community leaders. They don't have to be alumni to invest in the future lives of our students or the future of Texas. Now, that doesn't mean we can't pull heartstrings too. I hate following Gail. This is my second time to follow her in presentations. She did this, but she stole some thunder. She used the word change my life. I've heard the word change my life more in 3 weeks at TSTC than I heard in 20 years at Baylor. Although a great experience, not to the depth of level of changing lives, that we have that to sell as a case for support. The fourth, and this is my hook to you all, impassioned leadership, impassioned volunteer leadership. You bring an asset value to fundraising that the hired hands cannot. You will be the keys to either providing or encouraging or providing access to financial support through industry, through your personal relationships, through your family relationships, your spouse, for 3 reasons. You bring credible advocacy. We're paid to advocate, although it's a calling and it's a vocation. People see us coming, they're going to see me as annoying. They grew up with Mike. He's going to make them see me. That credible advocacy. Second, your access to these people. You're going to have keys of access to relationships that you can open up and we can come in and leverage. The third is you're able to lead by example. From the top, the strongest statement that can be made, whether it's measurements and grant applications, or going to see industry donors or private donors, they will ask, what's the percentage of giving from your volunteer leadership? Was the foundation board or the board of regents? And we were going to be able to say 100% and at this capacity. That is the strongest statement that can be made. So I look forward to working and turning each of your rocks in the near future. A good friend of mine and mentor, and I'll close with this, he said the 2 most important phrases you can use in fundraising is thank you and I need your help. Thank each of you for all that you've done to put us all in a position to move us forward in regards to advancement, and I'm going to need your help. Thanks, sir.
Jeff, you made a date statement, bringing in the plan by September. You really meant November at Sweetwater?
If that's correct,
November.
yes.
Yes, so correct. Okay.
You can applaud him if you want.
Yeah.
Okay, our last.
Wait, I have to do. Hold on, here we go. Yeah.
Mike, I'll make a comment while he talked about leadership. I'm president-elect of the Corpus Christi Symphony, but we have 33 members of that board, but 20% of our $1 million annual budget, 20% of it comes from the board members themselves. And that's an important function of a nonprofit organization.
The next minute order is number 5413, found on page FA 14. And this has to do with the lease of a hangar at TSTC Waco Airport to Max Flight Advantage LLC. We had considered some other tenants for this particular facility before. It's 24,120 square feet. But those particular arrangements didn't work out. A viable tenant is Max Flight Advantage Inc. They run a charter service. They're going to relocate from Ohio to the TSTC Waco Airport. As part of the agreement with them, they will be obligated to make $220,000 in capital improvements on the hangar, which does need some renovation within the first 3 years. And they'll start out with a relatively modest rent in the amount of $2,824 per month, and that increases in years 6 through 10 to over $4,000. And also it keeps going up for 11 through 15 years, 11 through 15, and also for years 16 through 20 to a rate of over $8,400 a month. So we think this is going to be a viable tenant, and will allow us to make good use of this hangar and also get the renovations that it needs. On page FA-18 is a map of the airport development, and you'll notice the location of ACTI. That's the hangar we're talking about. It's right on the flight line, close to the north end. So, any questions? Or
Gary,
comments?
what do you know about the company? What information other than coming from Ohio?
Well, let me talk or ask Kevin Dorton to address that, because he's the one who's been negotiating with it.
They're a company that's based out of Ohio that they're relocating to Texas. They've already moved down. They transitioned down here. They've negotiated. They're actually going to build in McGregor, another site, the bigger planes at our airport and the smaller planes in McGregor. It's a fairly new company. I looked at their financials. It wasn't our first choice. The first choice couldn't work out with the height of the doors. They went somewhere else. Thus, the rates here, as a risk and reward, as a banker, you understand, the rates are higher on them than they were on our first choice. So there's more risk because it's a relatively new company. They do have cash reserves. Startup entity, that's when we've escalated the pay scale, so that at first they needed, I think their estimate was about $440,000 in renovations that they wanted us to do. We're like, no, we're not needing it for our curriculum side, so no. We can sit there free as opposed to putting $500,000, because we couldn't recoup that investment. So what we did was made some slight concession in the front end, basically to afford them opportunities to secure the debt, and that's the whole point. We're wanting them to put that $500,000 worth of investment in at the front end, and then if they don't make it years 5 or 10 or whatever, then we got a better product. Right now there is a lot of abatement that needs to be done. L3, our biggest corporate partner at our airport, they looked at it as well. Their estimate was about $750,000 that needed to meet their needs. So it's not our first choice, but it is. Right now we're not making money on it. We had a venture in there that we're working on, but if you look at from a wholehearted standpoint of risk, what we were doing in there on the automotive side, from the airplane development, from a sovereign immunity standpoint, if a wing falls off or something catastrophic, if it's not in line with our mission, then there's liability and recourse on us. So it was a venture that we're not continuing.
Was there, I heard their type of business is executive jet charter?
Yes, sir. But they're
Explain that a little.
They're actually, they have I think it's a 9-seater plane that they do, where basically people can charter, like you can charter a limousine, you can charter a jet. Several people they're indicating they're expecting with the new stadium in Baylor, 5 minutes down the road, that they're expecting more activity, and as that triangle and the area around Waco gets more and more busy commercially, they're expecting more and more air travel needs. That's their business plan. They're also gonna do some repairs. They even talked about that air mode adventure that we're looking at. They can do it because they can insure, and they can insure for the liability. It's just something that was outside the mission of what our colleges, so we can't assume that risk.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I have another question, Gary. It's a new startup and a high risk, in a sense of financial. Is it possible that a bond, a performance bond is required, could be required? I'm just asking that question.
I don't think that's something we have considered.
I'll tell you, that kind of, based on my experience, that kind of bond would require a cash deposit by them.
Which would get over the hump.
Yeah, in other words, they'd need
Yes.
a letter of credit
Yes,
or some
yes.
kind of surety, and you guys can check me, unless the rules have changed lately. They might as well put the money up with us
Okay.
if they were gonna do that.
Just a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think we're taking a credit risk with this one. I do. But we went to market and we had many candidates and this was the second best one.
Thank you.
So we're not getting revenue today.
Thank you.
So a 20-year lease is pretty typical, and what's the buyout if they choose to?
Kevin did an analysis using data that he got from TxDOT. TxDOT is the Texas FAA administrator, so they administrate airports. And the rates that we have here are commensurate with a credit risk, and so are the terms of the lease.
So if they want to get out of it, like if the adventure was made.
Yeah, what are the exit,
What's the buyout?
what are the exit features?
One year notice, either party can get out of it 1 year notice, which is consistent with what we have on our other corporate partners as well at our
Chancellor, the main thing though, we're asking them to invest early in those first couple of years, which they'll invest a lot of funds up front, so then even if they opt out, we're still gonna be a lot better off than we were had we just let us in there, so.
Okay. The next section of the fiscal affairs section deals with the reports, and I'll hit the highlights of the reports. The first report, if you look at page FA 20, is a comparison of budget expenditures and encumbrances from September 12 to June 13. At this date, we're 10/12 through the year. You would expect about 17% of our budget's remaining if we were expending funds evenly throughout the year. And if you look at page FA21, you'll see the percents remaining in the right-hand column. We have 21%, 21.5% of our E&G funds left at this point, and all the rest of the funds match that or are higher than that. And so what you see happening here is we've been very cautious about spending money in 13, and we'll continue to be cautious. We expect to have a fairly good carry forward to 14, as we've discussed in the budget meeting. So that's where some of that's coming from. Any questions on that one? Okay, next is the 5-year trend analysis for restricted revenue. On page FA 23 is the chart, and you'll notice that we've had a slight increase, generally speaking, in 13 versus 12. And of course, the trend line here, going all the way back to 2009, 10 and 11. 10 and 11 were the extraordinary years where grants were coming to us out of Washington. A lot of those include ARRA grants. And of course, now that's all dropped off and we're back at more of a normal level. So what you see here is normal and typical at this point.
Gary, I want to make one quick comment. Mike reminded us yesterday that as we end the fiscal year, the expenditures that you showed us, we're not expending as quick as we could.
Yes.
And Mike reminded us that it's not a use it or lose it situation, that we can carry forward.
Right.
So that there's no concern about saying, oh, well, we haven't used our money. And so,
In the E&G funds in particular, that is a question and an issue, always has been. But now we have enough tuition money, which is also in the E&G category, and those funds can be carried forward. So I can assure you, we will get the general revenue expended. There won't be any lapse of general revenue.
because that's a concern of use it or lose it, and we don't have that problem.
Right.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, the next report is the pledge collateral report. And if you look at page FA 26, the last column on the right shows you that all of our collateral is sufficient, and this is as of May 31st. We do watch this carefully each month to be sure that we don't wind up on the short end of the collateral. The next report is the quarterly investment report as of May 31st. And there's 4 pages of this report. I'll call your attention to the last page that shows on line 119, the weighted average rate of interest to date is 0.48%. We'd like to be making a little bit more, but we're having, in some cases, difficulty even getting bids on CDs, as you all might understand. The 3-year Treasury bond yield benchmark for this period was 0.52, so we're not doing as well as that, but we're pretty close. And so far, we've made $148,000 in interest, which is probably 25% of what we used to make. So those funds are not earning a lot, but they're earning something. The next 3 reports are on the revenue bond proceeds. The first one, if you look at page FA 33, is the 2009 series of bonds. And you'll notice on Waco, Waco has about, at this point, at May 31st, they had $884,000 remaining to be spent. Harlingen had about $1.6 million remaining to be spent of those funds. Sweetwater had a little over $13,000, and Marshall had expended all those funds. So as we move forward, these funds will get expended. The next report is on the series.
Once these are all gone, this report will disappear.
It'll disappear.
Right.
When this is done, it'll disappear. The next report is the series 2011, and that particular one, you see the chart on FA 36, and that's all of Waco, and as of May 31st, we had about $4.4 million remaining to be expended, mostly on the Hutto project, the land and the construction of Hutto. Then the last report on the revenue bonds is on the 2011A bond proceeds, and those are all for the Harlingen campus, and none of those have been expended yet, but will start to be expended in 2014. That's the last written report, and my last report is an oral report about the auxiliary enterprises, and I'll report to you that at this point in time, the food service and the bookstores are all in the black. Looking okay. The housing is looking okay, except at West Texas and Marshall, which are running deficits at this point. We did have a discussion of that yesterday. So they probably will end the year in a deficit position.
Any questions for the fiscal committee? Okay. Fiscal Committee adjourns at 1:30.
Okay, thank you, Gene and Gary. JV, you want to share with us real quick?
Let me look back up. I received an email, if I can find it here. Technology. I'm blank out. Rolf Hobrick received a award. It's called the Tech Titan Award Hall of Fame. It's given by the technology group out of the Greater Dallas Metroplex, and he's going to be honored at a gala event at the Intercontinental Hotel in Dallas. But received that email today, so I know everybody would like to.
Can you kind of pass it on to us whenever you?
I will. I'll do
send it
that.
back
I'll go
up.
back there and I'll send it to everybody. Anyway. It was probably very obvious that he sent it to me on the day that he knew we were having a meeting.
Rolf would do that.
Not wrong.
Okay, at this time, we will reconvene the Committee of the Whole, and it is 1:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we will adjourn the committees. I'm sorry. Do you have any comments?
I do.
Chancellor?
In front of each one of you is a flyer that looks like this, and on the reverse is a letter from Chairman Heldenfeld. As you may recall, the Higher Education Coordinating Board hosts a leadership conference every fall, and this is a save the date reminder. What I would say to you is, if you've never been to this conference, I strongly encourage you to attend. And if you have, then you know that every couple years, or maybe every 3 years, it's not a bad idea to kind of refresh yourself with kind of the latest things that are going on. So I got this in my email a couple days ago, so I printed it out and brought it to y'all, because I don't know if you got it, and I wanted to make sure you could see it. So I hope you'll take this home and attend if you wish. I'll tell you, I'll be there, and it is possible that some of the other executives, in particular presidents, are most applicable in terms of attending. Some may be there and some may not, but I know I will. So just FYI.
Anything further? It is now 1:32, and we will adjourn committees. At this time, I'll ask Brian if he would give our invocation.
I told Ryan to be here at 3 o'clock, and so he's still at work, so if you will indulge me, I'll do the prayer.
Please.
I'll do a little preamble, so don't bow yet. Some of you have heard me give this before, but I think it's particularly fitting as we embark on all the things we're going to do. It's a prayer from Sir Francis Drake in 1577. He was tasked by the Queen to go to the New World in his boat, ship, and slay the dragons, and run the French and the Spanish off, and take care of business for her. He didn't plan on sailing around the world, but more of the time he was the aggressor. Turn this on.
No, you're good.
Okay. And part of the time he was the aggressee. He chased and was chased. Before he knew it, he had sailed all the way around the world. First guy to do that. And so as he left Portsmouth, I think it's Portsmouth, Portland, England, I forget which one, he had this prayer. And so I'm going to now ask that you bow, and I will read it. Disturb us, Lord, when we are too well pleased with ourselves, when our dreams have all come true because we have dreamed too little, when we have arrived safely because we sailed too close to the shore. Disturb us, Lord, when with the abundance of things we possess, we have lost our thirst for the waters of life. We have ceased to dream of eternity And in our efforts to build a new earth, we have allowed our vision of the new heaven to dim. Disturb us, Lord, to dare more boldly, to venture on wilder seas, where storms will show your mastery. When losing sight of land, we shall find the stars. We ask you to push back the horizons of our hopes and to push into the future in strength, courage, hope, and love. In our captain's name, amen.
Thank you, Randy.
Sir.
The meeting of the Texas State Technical College Board of Regents is called to order this Thursday, August 15, 2013 at 1:34 p.m. Can we determine a quorum, please, beginning with you, Ms. Forrest?
Penny Forrest, present.
Gene Seaman present.
J.B. Martin, present.
Joe Hearne present.
John Hatchell, present. Mike Northcott, present.
Linda McKenna, present.
Joe Correcki, present.
Ella Skinner present. Quorum is determined. Randy, do we have any guests?
I have not recognized or seen any. There's a couple of new people here for the first time, but one of them I'll introduce in a little while.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chancellor, you have any further comment?
No, sir, I do not.
Thank you. Randy, would you like to make an update of the TSTC activities, Marshall?
I'll begin by,
Great entrance.
I'll begin by making a squealing sound like a stuck pig, followed by the Chancellor tripping over his chair. What an auspicious way.
Showmanship. Showmanship.
Yesterday, we received a new commercial. The last couple of years, I've presented or shown the trophy that Brett Bright and his bunch have won from the company that does commercials for us. Yesterday, we got a new commercial, and I showed it to the presidents and the chancellor, and they said, wow, we all want a copy of this, so I want to screen it with you guys today. How about
I
turning
go
off,
to Texas State Technical College, so
how about turn off the light back there? All right, hit it.
I came to Texas State Technical College so I could make sparks fly.
I came to TSTC to hack the hackers.
I came to TSTC to learn to work on equipment that helps people.
I came to get my hands dirty.
I came to TSTC to work with really cool stuff.
TSTC gives you high-tech training that helps you get high-demand jobs.
You can do this.
You can do this.
You can do this.
Texas State Technical College, Marshall, tstc.edu. Get in, get out, get hired.
That's great.
Take credit for this, I can't. We've got a good company that does it, and when they produced this, the people that had won the two awards, they said they think this is the best one that they've ever done. And so we're having copies made for all the locations, so it won't be our tag at the end, it'll be each of the individual colleges. And so we think that's a winner, especially when we're doing today. All right, first slide. And if you'll dim it again, please. The reason it says Jim Rowland up here is I'm going to give the first 2/3 of this and then introduce Jim Rowland, who's the new provost of TSTC in North Texas. Jim, stand up. And for those of you that have not met Jim, this is Jim Rowland. Today's his first day on the job. And so we brought him in a trial by fire. Since TSTC North Texas, the Red Oak location will be a big part of what we do and what I talk about. I wanted Jim here to do that. I want to briefly talk about some program changes here at Marshall, review the strategy from 18 months ago that we talked about, and then finally finish up with Red Oak and Jim Rowland. We talked about this last time, eliminating programs, so the webmaster is the one that's gone. Those students were transitioned out, and so again, because of the poor job market, I've got 2 or 3 other programs I'm continuing to monitor. The thing that we're probably most proud of is the fact that we're going to be able to expand our allied health programs, and one of those is moving the biomedical technology program from this building to to the Medco building, or the Career and Technology building. On our campus, when you come in, the first building on the right that everybody thinks is ours belongs to Medco. We've leased about half the space in there, and so we'll be moving programs into that. And then we'll also be adding Allied Health, which they've been talking to us about doing this since, for the last 5 or 6 years. They've been wanting it and needing it. A little more detail on that is within a couple of months, we'll be starting some CE programs in Allied Health, and this is the list of them. And there's some pretty heady ones there, but that's what the community is asking us to do. We believe that we've got a good start on that. We'll do most of them with grants. We think we can convert those into credit courses in about a year. And of course, these types of things, as Linda probably knows, will lead to better careers, more advanced degrees in health technology. If you're not growing, you're dying. I've used some resources that I've cut and cut, and so finally this year, and I told you yesterday, I was going to take some money and invest in our future. And so that $100,000 I was talking about yesterday is what's going to help us do this. The next 6 slides you've seen before. The Chancellor showed it to you a couple of times, and you'll see it again. Because back in February, down in Harlingen, we talked about this is our vision of the future. And I've struggled whether this is a vision, a mission, a journey, whatever it is, but it's this. This is what we're trying to do. I don't know if that's the what or the how, but that's our aim, that's our goal, that's where we're headed. You saw this last time. This is the mega regions, and you see the I-35 and I-45 corridors and the growth in Texas and where the growth is located. We talked about TSTC East Texas and TSTC West Texas, the fact that the populations are centered here. You got a little bit out around Abilene, you got one down here in Tyler, but this is East Texas, and this is most of West Texas. The population densities we've talked about is very skinny. You saw this slide last time also. I say we've got it surrounded. It's probably like Custer at the Little Bighorn. We've got the Metroplex surrounded. We're going after them. These are the 4 counties that were the dark colors, Collin, which is McKinney, and Plano, then Dallas, Tarrant County, of course, is Fort Worth, and Denton County's up there also. They produce nearly 50,000 high school graduates a year, and that's the population of Gungo where the Texans are. It's a footprint of half the size of Marshall's and a quarter the size of West Texas. We believe that the area we're going into is not too big geographically for students to go to, but that's where the populations are. There's 2.5 million people over there. Again, our strategy is go where the populations are and look for partnerships. Just because we're doing Red Oak does not mean that we're not going to continue to look for partnerships at other locations, because we are. This is my slide back again instead of the Chancellor's. Be careful what you ask for, because you may get it. That's what happened at Red Oak. I say my prayers every morning, God, let me grow, and the next thing I know, I get a phone call that says, congratulations, you have caught the bus. For those of you that don't know, a real quick recap. It was called Ellis County, but we call it TSTC North Texas. 15 minutes downtown Dallas, intersections of these major thoroughfares. Matter of fact, for those of you that travel those in the next few days, you'll see our new billboards were put up yesterday also, talking about Red Oak. Budget, that's the biennium, is $2.25 million per year. 30,000 square feet in their CAPE facility, Career and Technology Education facility. To be determined. We were going to do TRBs. They were lost this session, but we haven't given up. We've got some strategies. We're going to try to go ahead and get some sort of second stage going as quick as we can, but we've got to think about what that might look like here. So we haven't given up on that. And I want to make sure you understand that Red Oak is not the end, it's the beginning. It's the beginning. It's the first step in the strategy that we laid out in those 6 slides 18 months ago. And so it's begun. And I call it a beachhead. For some of the people here, I was going to call it Omaha Beach. But some of the people wouldn't know what the Omaha Beach means, but anyway, I'll just call it our beachhead. Jim?
Well, thank you very much, especially from Joe here for hiring me, since he was part of the committee that grilled me
that day on, and various questions on trying to accept this job. I look forward to this job. I love challenges, and this is definitely a challenge. This area is a great area, like they said, to get a foothold into the DFW market, and I think it's perfect timing. Of course, it's always perfect timing because it's the timing we have now, but it's going to be the perfect timing to move into there. And the strategies, what we're looking for in a very short-term strategy is one that may not have been terribly successful in the past, which is a dual credit, an emphasis on the dual credit path. But I think you're seeing from the Texas legislature and the state of Texas is really beginning to emphasize the CE, the continuing education and CTE programs that are in our high schools and that transition to college and taking advantage of that. First, and then also because it's a great deal for the student. For $100, you're getting 3-hour credit into the class. And so what we're going to do here at the very beginning for our initial strategy is to concentrate on the dual credit pathway, or zip line like we like to call it, into the career. And so we're sitting down, when I say we, it's April Graham and myself that already sat down with the Red Oak ISD and built the crosswalk between their CE program, CTE program, and our degrees and certificates. And then they have also, being Red Oak ISD, has already said they will allow myself and April into the classroom to explain to the students exactly what they can do with these 3 to 12 hours that they're already earning in high school and how quickly they can finish out a certificate or a degree in the TSTC system. And so the initial technologies that we plan on standing up will allow for that immediate crosswalk between the Red Oak ISD and TSTC, and also as I meet like tomorrow with the Waxahachie ISD, as we start building all those crosswalks from the high school to the college, is what our initial strategy is what we're trying to look at for the first technologies we bring on. After that, in a first year strategy, we're going to look at the things that we've already done successful. We being TSTC. We have some very successful technologies where we have high volumes of students, high paying jobs on the other end, low investment, maybe initial. And then to me, what that gives us time with is begin to partner with the local industry and build the partnerships. And for those types, we're meeting with the fire department, and they do training. And I think they're looking for us to provide that training for them. Those kinds of partnerships will take a little bit of time, and we will bring them on in the next 1 to 5 year plan. But whatever we're doing on the priorities is, as I've talked with April, and as we keep hiring people over there, we're looking at the relationship building in that community with what has already been built with Senator Pitts, with the Red Oak ISD, and the partners as we have met with the industry partners in that area. Whatever we do, we need to do well, set high standards for whatever we have, and TSTC needs a presence. I know from being at TSTC Waco in the last 3 years in the aviation division is that the number one thing when you talk to people is they go, we didn't know you existed. We didn't know you were there. Somebody 20 miles up the road sent their son to Arizona for pilot training because they didn't know we did it. And so we need, just like the billboards that Randy's already put up, we need to establish that presence in that area so that they know their option, and that option is TSTC. And then, like I said, as we're trying to grow smartly using Michael Bettersworth, Barton Day, the different people as they're looking into the research to try to figure out what do we open first. Make sure that whatever we do it smartly, and we don't waste the taxpayers' money as we go forward on those kinds of things. Again, I just want to let you know that I appreciate the opportunity. You'll find out I'm a passionate guy about things I believe in. I'm a native Texan. I believe in Texas, and I'm for it. And I want to make sure that we succeed and give the best return on investment to the state and what we do. So again, thank you for the opportunity. Jim and I will be glad to answer any questions. Well, before we do that though, April, would you stand up? He's mentioned April's name several times. You may have seen and known April from before. She's the new Vice President for Instruction over at Red Oak. She was the Associate Vice President here for 6 years, April, 5 years? had a lot to do with our Success Center and the success of primarily our developmental ed students enjoy in the state of Texas. And so I asked her to replicate that program and the other kinds of things we do in Red Oak. Red Oak is a new model. No place else does TSTC have a campus on a high school campus. And so we think that the zip line comments that Jim made and similar type of emphasis from the legislature on that, we don't know what this thing's going to look like, but instead of us having to travel to the campus and break down doors, we're integrated into that campus. So we think that's going to be a great model. And I don't know if the future ones will look like that, but we think this is a great start. Anybody have any questions for me? All right, I'm going to roll the commercial one more time because I think it's so cool.
I came to Texas State Technical College so I could make sparks fly.
I came to TSTC to hack the hackers.
I came to TSTC to learn to work on equipment that helps people.
I came to get my hands dirty.
I came to TSTC to work with really cool stuff.
TSTC gives you high-tech training that helps you get high-demand jobs.
You can do this.
You can do this.
You can do this.
Texas State Technical College, Marshall, tstc.edu. Get in, get out, get hired.
Thank you, Randy. Lillian, at this time, are there any public comments? Thank you. Next, we're going to hear a report on the status of summary of compliance with requirements for minors on campus from Jonathan.
Good afternoon. Lillian is currently passing around a report. Last summer, this time last year, there was an audit that related to criminal background checks, and there were some follow-up issues. In responding to those issues, we discovered there was one part of our compliance with events that had minors on campus that we needed to work on. And so this last year, we've been assessing that risk. Enterprise Risk Management was engaged to look at that, and so this report is a result of that activity. We basically created awareness about what the requirements were and identified the specific training requirements that were needed and got a response back from the colleges on how they're going about responding to that specific issue. So that's what you see in front of you. We can say at this time that all of the campuses are meeting the minimum requirements associated with that specific issue. And as well, they've implemented additional controls to respond to those related risks. I think looking back a year ago, the issue sort of became apparent on the heels of Sandusky and Penn State, and so I just wanted to kind of reckon back to that. And I actually have, there's a binder over there. It's the free report from the actual investigator that did the internal investigation into the Penn State scandal. And we continue to look at the issues that contributed to the Penn State issue. If you look at that report, I mean, there were some specific things that were talked about in there that contributed to that, and it wasn't compliance with a specific requirement when you have minors on your campus. It was more of a culture of corruption that had occurred in the organization. Some specific reports in there were like, most senior leaders at Penn State showed a total disregard for the safety and welfare of Sandusky's child victims for 14 years and empowered Jerry Sandusky to continue his abuse. It wasn't a compliance issue. It was a total failure with regards to ethics and compliance and risk management. And so we pay attention to those things. We've actually, my group has been to a couple of presentations as people have gone back and unpacked that issue. And I'll point out four things that most of those presentations focus in on, and it's attestation and disclosure processes. I think you see at TSTC, we've taken that really seriously. Our board actually sponsored implementing that process 5-6 years ago, and we see that as an active, ongoing process here at TSTC. The other issue is general tone at the top regarding compliance and ethics. I think it's great to hear that the state auditor's office is impressed with our proactive approach to enterprise risk management, and this is the issue of compliance and ethics. Incident response and procedures and effectiveness. We have Jason and I have had a number of issues that we've collaborated with respect to incident response, and we continually assess how that continues to go. And I think the last thing that they point out is what is the firm's approach to victim advocacy? If you have issues that occur on your campuses, how do you go about advocating for the victims? And that's probably the next phase of this, is to we've been raising awareness about victims advocacy and how do you deal with an issue of assault that happens, and Chancellor Research continues to send training notifications to the group to let the team know that this is an issue that we want to be paying attention to. But I'm proud to say the enterprise risk management, the audit group, legal counsel, we are deliberately meeting, focusing on these issues, looking at what are trends, what is the tone, and so beyond the specific issues that you asked us to look at last year, I think the broader context, we're paying attention to those as well. So that's my report. I'd love to take any questions.
I want to thank the board for heightening the awareness on this issue and let you know that, as Jonathan said, this has begat other sensitivities, if you will, in terms of making sure that we're doing everything in our power to make sure folks are safe. During the last legislative session, I happened to be in the right place at the right time when I watched a testimony regarding sexual assaults on campus in Texas. And I can tell you it was a heart-wrenching experience to listen to some of the victims who sat before the legislature and told their story. I also heard testimony from an expert in the field of sexual assault, particularly on college campuses, and he gave a startling number that in some places as many as 20% of the female students leave the college campus having been the victim of an unwelcome assault. 20%. That is not an acceptable situation. So I want you to know that I personally have taken on, I get emotional about it because I imagine it's my daughter. Pardon me. I just couldn't stand the notion. So it's a really important thing for me, and it's the next thing we do is make sure that our students have a safe place to study, particularly those who can't defend themselves in particular situations, and we have to do it for them. So I just want you to know, and I hope you'll pardon me, I really care about this, and we're going to work on it.
Right.
What brought it up was the concept of background checks and the more costly the depth of the background check, thorough background check, more expensive it is. So did we change our policy around background checks for employees that have contract?
The approaches are different at each of the campuses, and it's often risk assessed. I mean, if they have just a higher frequency of minors on campus, they're probably taking a more conservative approach to that. I still caution against the reliance on background checks as a real thorough control for that. I think it's something we have to do. I think it's the public's expectation, but it's not. I'd caution against relying on it. If they would have relied on that for Sandusky, it wouldn't
have shown
It's
it.
not a reliance on it, it's more of a liability thing. We do everything
Right.
within our power to ensure that people working on our campus don't have that history thing in their background.
That's correct. Yes, we
The
do.
worst thing to have is somebody in the newspaper saying they had a history in TSTC.
Didn't know.
That's exactly right. That's what I allude to with the public expectation. We have to do
So
it.
did we change our
We have I think we're, Jason, can you speak to it more specifically?
Whenever we did the audit, one of the things that came up that we're out of compliance with is not widespread, but we noticed that for people that have contact with, and I may be speaking a little bit out of turn here, but generally, high school age students and younger, a certain type of background check had to be done, and what that background check did was it wasn't just a one-time thing. If they did something in the future, if I remember right, and it would pop up. We get some sort of notification and it pop up. We did the follow-up. What we noticed was that for that particular piece, where we were out of compliance, we have improved. We have started making sure that we're doing that level of background check for people that are having interaction with that age.
We do 100% criminal background checks. It's just the level of checks is different based on, there's some statutory requirements related to certain types of people that are on our campus and the kind of contact we have with them. So, I mean, we can say we're consistent in applying criminal background checks to all of our employees. Any new employee that comes on board.
Yes.
So we do them?
Yes.
Yeah, is what we're saying.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
If there's not any reports, yes.
Is there any other reports? Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Ms. Forrest,
Second.
Mr. Seaman, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of April 18, 2013.
So moved.
Mr. Barton? Second. Mr. Gurecki, all in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion to approve the minutes of June 4, 2013. Mr. Northcutt, motion, second.
I'll second it.
Mr. Hearne, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. If you will, please note the consent agenda items. Section 12. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Hatchell, motion, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Forrest, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
June 4th is the one you approved. You did both.
Yes. June 18 and 40. I'm sorry, I missed it. Sorry. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
at this time, is there any unfinished business? Is there any new business? There being none, the chair announces the meeting of the TSTC Board of Regents held at Texas State Technical College, Marshall, Texas, on Thursday, August 15, 2013, after proper posting and in accordance with Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code for specific purpose provided in Sections 551.071, 551.072, and 551.074 will recess from open meeting into closed meeting at 2:02 p.m. Central Standard Time. Gentlemen, the closed meeting will adjourn and the board will reconvene into open meeting at 3:11 p.m. Central Standard Time. Mr. Chancellor, you have any comment?
I do indeed. I know that coming up at the next meeting is the election officers, and frankly, I don't know if you'll be chairman again, but I do want to say the year that I've spent with you as chairman has been an absolute delight.
Well, thank you.
And I truly appreciate it. You had a tough act to follow with Mike Northcutt, and you did a great job. And I just want to say how much I appreciate the mentorship and the guidance, and sometimes just the shoulder to cry on that both you and Mike gave me over the past 2 years. And if you think that we're doing well, a lot of it has to do with the leadership you gave us, and so we appreciate it.
Thank you. Penny, have any comments?
I do. Thank you.
Jean?
Well, other than to
No,
say
sir.
thank you to Mike North for 8 years
Yeah.
of service. Any comments?
Yes. He's a little busy. Gene, you have any comments?
No, sir.
JV?
Well, we hope Mike Northcutt's with us one more time, because since your cousin, the governor, what's his name down there, has not appointed anyone yet, so I think he wants to keep you on for a while.
Stay.
So, anyway.
We'll see if y'all are blessed or not, that you're not having.
We'd love to.
Joe?
No, I don't have any comments, thanks.
I think we spent a whole year training you, we'll just let you again.
Second that motion.
Mike, you have any comments?
Oh, just, another great meeting, glad to have all y'all in Marshall. And I just think that, assuming this is my last meeting, I just want to say there's been tremendous progress made the last 12 years. It was a great board when I came on, a lot of great people. This mission is real special, and I think that's what makes this board so special, because everybody here takes a real interest in the staff, all the faculty, especially our product that we turn in. So it's just really, really special. And I really believe that the future of Texas really hinges on TSTC. And if there's someone else out there that delivers a product like us too, well, it hinges on them too. But we're the leader, and we'll continue to be the leader. And I think really we finally reached that point where everybody else recognizes what TSTC is offering. We're seeing it too with Red Oak and with Hutto, that when they're coming to us and they're wanting us there, and they're leveraging their resources to help us get there, well, that tells you folks really want us. And I think all of us in business, we'd like to think that folks want us that way. That's how that TSTC. So that's it.
Thank you. Linda?
Just thank you to the leadership for your patience when we ask questions and your willingness to always be available to us and provide us the information we request. And thank you, and Mike is going to do this.
Joe?
Well, regardless of what the governor does as far as when he appoints or doesn't appoint you, but I personally like to see you when we do the dedication of Hutto, and of course later Red Oak. And your 12 years on this board kind of reminds me of my 12 years as mayor, and I really do appreciate, and I know I can speak for every member here in the school, at the college itself, and that is that we just appreciate and value your, what did I call it, public service. And I know this is not the only thing you're involved in, but you're great people. You and Carolyn and your family are good people.
She is the boss.
Nice said, Joe.
He's a good one.
And I want to echo what everybody said. Thank you for all your service. And the comment you made is really true. It's a great time to be part of TSTC. It's an exciting time.
We're on the upward swing.
Right. Regarding officers, the election of officers, as you brought up, let me read to you our bylaws very quickly, our new bylaws. Not later than 30 days prior to the first regular meeting after the start of the fiscal year, nominations for the chair, vice chair, executive place 1, and executive place 2 shall be sent to the general counsel, Ray, in writing by mail, facsimile, or electronic mail. The general counsel shall confirm that the nominees are willing to serve as officers of the board. The general counsel will provide the slate of officers of the board to be voted on as the first order of business at the first regular meeting after the start of the fiscal year, which will be in Sweetwater. The newly elected officers of the board shall assume office at the time of the election. Therefore, I remind you The deadline for your nominations will be October 1st. And the secretary to the board will send you a reminder along with the general counsel contact information. And I want to remind you also that the board meeting in Sweetwater has been changed to the 6th from the 7th. So if you'd make a note of that. Is there any further new business? The meeting of the Texas State Technical College Board of Regents is adjourned.